So lately I've been talking a lot about time travel and doing videos explaining how the butterfly effect and how time travel actually works within Dragon Ball. And it's not just because of the reintroduction of Future Trunks into Dragon Ball Super, but also because I love time travel stories. But one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people are getting time travel and time manipulation in Dragon Ball confused, comparing Goku Black to Whis and things like that. So on this video, what I hope to accomplish is to focus a little bit on the various time manipulation techniques within the Dragon Ball series versus actual Dragon Ball time travel. Let's get to it, and I hope you enjoy. If you're watching this and you haven't watched my video called Time Travel Explains, where I go into how time travel actually works when it comes to Trunks' time machine, you'll definitely want to check that out. What we've come to understand is that in Toriyama's Dragon Ball story, if you go back in time with Bulma's time machine, you will create an alternate timeline rather than modify the actual timeline that you came from, and then establish a connection between your timeline in the future and the past. However, with various time manipulation techniques, it's not the same property at all, because with time manipulation, you can actually manipulate time to give you an advantage in battle. And up until this point, there have been 3 instances of somebody using a time manipulation technique, which, as I said, has different properties than Trunks' time machine. So the first time that we actually see what I would qualify as a time manipulation technique is with the battle with Mr. Guldo on Namek and his time freeze technique. Now, the thing about the time freeze technique is that Mr. Guldo didn't exactly freeze all of time. He only freezed time within a certain radius of where he was at. So things were still going on around him, and essentially the technique is used primarily for combat to, well, freeze your opponents, but not all of time freezes. Now, what's interesting is in the anime version of the events, Mr. Guldo holds his breath and can freeze time and keep it frozen for as long as his breath is held. But in the manga, it's never really stated that he holds his breath. It's more so about his energy and how he gets more and more tired the longer he has the freeze up. As far as this technique goes, in my opinion, it's more so about paralysis of your opponent versus actually freezing all of time, because like I said, it only applies to a certain area and a certain target that Mr. Guldo chooses. And those of you who have played Xenoverse, you might remember that they renamed the technique Time Control. I'm not really sure why that is, because he can't really control time, but he can freeze it. This technique proved that even if you're weak in combat, if you've got something up your sleeve like this, you might be a dangerous threat. Now, moving forward, we have to talk about Wiss's time reversal technique, and I think this is the big one that's confusing a lot of people. Wiss's time reversal technique is not the same as time traveling. I've also heard this technique being called the Temporal Do-Over, because the time limit on this is only 3 minutes. What he actually does is he doesn't go back in time, he actually reverses the current of time in the space-time continuum. He actually turns time backwards for a 3-minute time limit to redo events. And of course, if you saw Resurrection F the movie, he explains that sometimes Lord Beerus gets out of hand and destroys something he wasn't supposed to destroy, and thus Whis has to step in and fix it, do it over again. Now, the most recent time we've seen a time manipulation technique is from the legendary assassin Hit and his Tokitobashi, otherwise known as time skip. Now, the time skip technique is interesting because it kind of takes the ideas behind both the Mr. Guldo technique and Wiss's technique and combines them into one, but instead of going backwards, Hit actually goes forward. Essentially what Hit does, from my understanding, is he's able to stop time for a 1/10 of a second, and at that 1/10 of a second, Hit is able to essentially move forward in time ahead of his opponent to anticipate his moves, such as blocking, counterattacking, striking, and things like that. In the anime version of the Goku versus Hit fight, Hit explains that he actually improves this technique more and more and more during his fight with Goku. However, in the manga, it's a little bit different in that the time skip only affects those that are weaker than him. So if Hit fights somebody stronger, the time skip technique just won't work. Not to mention that nowhere in the manga does it state that Hit actually improves the time skip technique, but in the anime, he actually goes down to a 1/2 a second, if not even faster. I like to think of the Tokitobashi as a faster and more effective version of Mr. Guldo's technique, But unlike the Mr. Guldo technique, it seems like Hit is actually able to freeze all of time. Now, there's not enough evidence to really support this claim, but there's also nothing that really contradicts it, because the way it's described as a time skip or a Tokitobashi, it's implied that even the audience couldn't see him move. So it's not just something that Goku and Vegeta had trouble with. None of the spectators could see him move either. Even though I have a weird, funky feeling that the deities like Vados and Whis and the Omni King probably see right through it, whereas the mortals are the ones that seem to have trouble with it. But hey, Hit's an assassin, and you gotta do what you gotta do to get paid. And with that, I'll go ahead and bring this video to a close, spread this video out to the world, and remember to subscribe if you have not for more videos like this. Thank you for your support as always. I'll catch you down the road.